Today, on episode 78 of Rail Talk, we welcome Resolute Racing's John Stewart in a new series we're calling, Why Did These Guys Ever Agree to Talk to Us? I'm Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds. And once again, Juno is on my shoulder because she can't be left alone because she's a tiny baby.
How do I top that? How do I follow that, Joe Bianca? Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable. Joe, it is an action-packed show. We have some Derby preps. We have a great interview with Resolute John Stewart, and we have something that may change the industry. Throw it on its different axis.
Ooh, sounds spicy. Can't wait. The opinions expressed on Rail Talk are those of hosts Joe Bianca and Jon Green and do not reflect those of anybody we work with or work for. Rail Talk is sponsored by TaylorMade, the worldwide leader in thoroughbred sales, marketing, and horse care, family-owned and operated since 1976. And John reminded me of this. It's never too early to have them scout your yearlings for placement for later this year. I know they're only short yearlings right now, but there's no accident that TaylorMade, their consignments are at the top of pretty much every single yearling sale. They are the experts. Their expertise is unmatched in this business, especially when it comes to yearlings. So this is the time to reach out for them right now. Don't wait too long. There's going to be a ton of applications. There's going to be a ton of horses that are put in front of them. Figure out where best to market your horse. They're experts at that as well. They've helped John and Len market their horses when they bring them to these sales. So definitely reach out to them right now. And obviously they cover the stallion market as well with their booming stallion roster, boarding, partnerships. They do it all. And that takes an unbelievable team. And we've seen it firsthand that at every level of the business, they have people who are experts in horse care, experts in marketing, and are able to customize every single client, every single horse, to have them have the most success at the racetrack. They'll take care of you just like they took care of John and Len, and they've done for so many people in this business. Hit them up at tailormadefarm.com. Okay, so we had a solid round of Derby preps after our MAGE Rage Derby Contest, sponsored, by the way, by MAGE over at Airdrie Stud, the winner of the 149th Kentucky Derby. And a lot of people talk about, you remember how Justify had only run like twice, and then he won the Triple Crown. Everyone's like, wow, how unprecedented. MAGE had only run a couple of times before the Derby as well. He ran that huge race in the Florida Derby off of a maiden win, right? And then he shows up in the Kentucky Derby and wins at 18-1. He's obviously from a great young sire. We had a horse West Point did on Saturday named Sorcerer's Silver by Good Magic, who was super, super impressive, and we were stoked to have him. So you definitely want to buy into the Good Magic breeding line, because that's only going to get more prestigious and more successful as he has more sons, and Mage being out of Puka, who's a blue hen mare as well. I mean, come on, don't be silly. He's a Kentucky Derby winner at a great stallion farm. Go take advantage of it, and take advantage of listening to how we did in our first week on the MAGE Rage Derby Trail Contest. How about Michelle? Pretty awesome start for Michelle Yu, jumping out to a lead with Citizen Bull. We were like, in round two, we were like, oh, she happened to get the 2-year-old champion,
right? And she was
in round
disappointed.
two. Like
She was disappointed about it. She was like, oh well, I guess I'll settle for Citizen Bull.
I guess I'll take Citizen Bull, and lo and behold, and in many cases, Occam's razor, like the most logical explanation, is the correct one, and the most logical pick was Citizen Bull in that case. So Michelle gets 2 points, and then 0.4 for Ferocious. So she's got 2.4. And how about Dan? Everybody loved to make jokes about Dan and his team, including myself and John. And then here he is, just right behind Michelle after Captain Cook wins the Withers over the weekend. So he's got 2 points, and now he's in second. Skip, you got to adjust your morning line, buddy. Yeah. You got to adjust those odds. And then after that, Joe, that's me, and Sam are tied for third place with 1 point, because I had Rodriguez, who was second to Citizen Bull, and then she had Tappan Street, who was second in the Holy Bull on Saturday. And then Mr. Last Pick, John, is in last with Matticat Road, but did not get blanked. Matticat Road got 6 points, 0.6, so it's all still very close. And these preps are only going to heat up. John, any reaction to that first weekend?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Joe. It is the first weekend of February. And whereas these races are important, no doubt about it, historically, they're not the precursor of the Kentucky Derby winner. So it's great that some of these horses are moving along. You had a practical joke in Captain Cook that won. Obviously, Citizen Bull in a 5-horse field Some people say it was really a 3-horse field, but a 5-horse field out in the Robert Lewis. Won impressively after bobbling at the start. He continues to improve, which is hard to do, being that he was 2-year-old champion. And then the Holy Bull, I think, was a little bit lackluster in my humble opinion. In the grand scheme of things, I think that the horse that won the previous race, Guns Loaded, that won the Mucho Macho Man, showed that he's a really good sprinter. And that 2 turns maybe isn't necessarily his cup of tea, as you like to say, Joe. But the main thing is that we're landing on a lot of good horses in the contest and representing properly. And there's only like 58 more Derby preps between now and the first weekend of May. So I'm sure that those changes, that the scorecard will change multiple times. At least I hope so.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of meat on the bone, obviously, still. And I think what's interesting about Saturday at Gulfstream is, I mentioned Sorcerer's Silver. River Thames was also very impressive in that allowance race. Michelle picked him. I was thinking about picking him. I just don't know if he's going to stretch out to a 1.25 miles, but he got a mile at least. He got a 92, I think 92-ish buyer.
Low 90s.
So, yeah, I think between Sorcerer's Silver and River Thames, probably the 2 best horses, the 2 best 3-year-olds on Saturday at Gulfstream were not in the Holy Bull.
Right.
So I also broke ground by having the first horse already to be ruled off the Derby trail. So rated by Merit. Listen, I knew this was a risky selection. He had only breezed once, but I figured he showed enough talent as a 2-year-old that if he did make it to the Derby, he would be good value. But no, he's going to pass on the Derby, and then hopefully he can have a really good summer with some of the bigger races. Because he was running big numbers. Like, he was running 2s on the Thoroughgraph sheets, like 99 buyers. So I think he will be a serious horse. Maybe Mage will come back around and sponsor a Travers contest for us, and I can get it back. But yeah, very fun first weekend. Lots of action. I'm glad everybody's on the board, and can't wait to see the rest of the prep schedule.
And Joe, the new Vegas odds came out. Sandman went from 45-1 to 20-1. Just saying.
Wow. Wait until they see the shirts you printed up. Then he's going to go down to like 8-1. What?
I'm knocking wood. We're not talking.
Yeah, no. We don't. The Kentucky what? Never heard of it.
Yeah, first weekend of May. That's all we're saying. First weekend of May.
Rail Talk is sponsored by Fasig-Tipton. Big day for Fasig-Tipton today. We're recording this on Monday. Today is the Kentucky Winter Mix Sale. Awesome sale where you can find a variety of short yearlings, broodmare prospects, horses of racing age. It's a great table setter kind of for the rest of the year with their brick and mortar sales. And we mentioned this last week. They had the digital flash sale, the 1-horse digital flash sale for Gigante. Grade 2 winning millionaire by TaylorMade's Not This Time. Sold for $610,000 to Clark Brewster and Ellen N Racing. That is such an awesome platform for horses who are at that level, and there's going to be a lot of action for them, but you don't want to just throw them in with the rest of the horses of racing age. You want them to have their own spotlight, their own platform, and Fasig has been able to do that, including for our friends Jon Green and Len Green at DJ Stable. So they'll take care of you if you have that horse, and they obviously have the digital sale coming up later this month for additional opportunities to turn around horses, buy turnkey horses to be on the racetrack in just a couple of weeks. I'm telling you, if you have not gotten involved in digital sales yet, you are falling behind. It's February 20th through the 25th is the next one. Entries close this Wednesday, February 5th. It's easy to bid. It's easy to buy. It's easy to build your stable or to clear out room for new horses that you might be buying later this spring. Then there's the March digital sale, March 13th through the 18th. Go get involved and learn more at digital.fasig-tipton.com. Yeah, so we're gonna talk to John Stewart a little bit later, and he's one of those guys that I think is a little bit of a disruptor in this business. Mike Repole, also disruptor in this business, and we're always open and looking for new ideas on this show to improve the sport and to think outside the box for ways to make it more sustainable for the future. And one of the things that we talk about sometimes is the breeding aspect, because there's a lot of times where you'll see like the amount of mares that a stallion's been bred to, and you're like, isn't there a better way than having this horse like physically go through all this to produce all these foals? And there's obviously the logistical concerns too of like shipping mares back and forth. Like I wonder if there's like a little bit of a better, more efficient way to do this, or to kind of like factor in some new technology into the breeding game. And so, John, just I'll let you go a little bit because you're more of an expert on this than me, but these are some conversations that we've had off the air, and just give us an idea of some of the things that you've heard brought up or that have popped into your mind.
Well, Joe, I mean, we're sitting here on the breeding side, and we've had 8 straight years of a reduction in overall foals that are being produced, and it's not because of the economy, because the economy is doing quite well, the stock market is doing quite well, so it's not necessarily like an economic thing that we're talking about now. So there's got to be a reason why, and B, how we can kind of shift and make a difference. And we've changed things recently in the industry. We went to a more digital sale outlook and venue, and that not only didn't take away from brick and mortar sales, I think it enhanced the industry as a whole as a way to go ahead and monetize horses sooner and more efficiently. Boutique racing meets, I think, are the way to go now, as opposed to these year-long races. You look at how popular Saratoga is and Keeneland meets are, and people want to have the excitement of a smaller meet. Obviously, HISA and HIWU have changed, the rules and literally and figuratively, as far as making sure that we have a safer, cleaner overall product. And I think those things are revolutionary. They're entrepreneurial, and they were much needed because the way that the industry was going for the past few years, especially, we were trending in the wrong direction. And I think that there's there's the problem with the foal crop, and it's decreasing, and we have to recognize it. And Joe, we are the only sport right now that actually has live matings. We don't have the taboo term, artificial insemination. And you look at other livestock channels and industries, and it's all artificial insemination, whether it's other horse breeds or cattle, or even sometimes even dogs. If you want a purebred, you just FedEx a sample over. And I've been thinking a lot about, are we ready as an industry to kind of strike down this last taboo of why don't we do it like everyone else? Why isn't it done? And I think that artificial insemination is an opportunity to do a number of things. So just sit back for a second and then let me kind of pontificate on some of the pros that I see. Because I've been thinking about this and talking to other industry leaders, that have artificial insemination in their respective businesses. Number one, it's going to increase genetic diversity. We're going to have access to stallions literally worldwide. So if I wanted to breed a mare to Wooten Bassett or Dark Angel or Frankel, I could order the semen and have it be FedEx to wherever my mare is. That's going to increase genetic diversity to right now it's limited to, just where your mare physically is. It's going to reduce the spread of disease. So many times you breed a mare and she gets injured, she gets dirty, or there's a problem with the mating, that would reduce it. It's going to reduce stallion fatigue. I mean, Joe, you know better than I do that we're in an industry where the popular stallions are being bred 200, 250, 300 times in a window of like 4 months. That's just too much. It's too much for these horses, these stallions. And it's too much, it's not good for them physically. And God forbid they get older or they have an injury. It's not good for them to mount and dismount as many times as they're doing, as opposed to where you can collect samples year round, literally calendar year, as opposed to just in this, one season that we're talking about. It's also going to reduce the potential injury to all parties involved. Right now, when you breed a mare, Joe, I don't know if you realize, but there's like 5 or 6 people that are in the breeding shed. So there's 5 or 6 humans that are in the breeding shed. Sometimes there's a baby foal in there. There's the mare and there's the stallion, and there's a safety issue that's involved for the humans as well as for the equines. I think it's going to reduce a lot of that potential injury as well. And another that's not a tangible amount, tangible reason, but has value, is that there's going to be a pride of ownership. I think that if I have a chance to have a mare that I board in New Jersey, and I'm limited right now to, if I want to breed regionally, I'm limited to, 2 stallions in New Jersey and a half a dozen stallions really in the outlying states, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, from a commercial standpoint. It doesn't make sense. But if I can order semen from Kentucky and have it delivered, then all of a sudden I'm popping out better bred horses that may be Jersey breds or maybe New York breds or wherever my regional mare is, I can expend more money or dedicate more money in my budget to stud fees than I do in boarding the mare at a different farm, vanning the mare, shipping the mare, all the veterinary care that goes into, breeding mares down at a different farm. All of that is, I wouldn't say eliminated, but greatly reduced. Where if I have a standard budget to breed my mare, now a higher percentage of it can go to the stud fee as opposed to the carrying costs. So now all of a sudden I'm going to have better bred horses, which should commercially beget more money for me at yearling sales, et cetera. Now, there's other reasons that to go into it. I don't want this to be a one-way conversation because I respect your opinion, and there are some downside to artificial insemination, but I really feel like that it addresses genetic diversity, reduces spread of disease. It helps people in their pocketbook from an economic standpoint. And from my understanding on the accounting side, Joe, farms that board seasonal mares, it's a loss lead for them, or it's a break even at best. So it's not like the farms in Kentucky are going to be, just outraged about, hey, we don't have all this additional money coming in. They have to hire more people. They don't have necessarily excess capacity to have mares there and have it be a money-making thing. On the flip side, if I have a better bred foal, because it's a more expensive stallion, therefore it should be a higher average as a yearling, and I let that farm that normally would board my mare, I let them sell the foal, well, then they're going to earn more in commissions, and it's going to be a lower overhead, lower hanging fruit for them as well. Again, these are just some of the things that kind of popped around in my mind. There's other opportunities as well, but what are your initial thoughts? Because I respect your opinion on this as a broad thinker.
Well, no, I mean, it's interesting that you bring it up, and it's interesting that it's the first time I've really heard it brought up, period, on a podcast and in racing. And I'm not an expert in the breeding business. Like I would never pretend to be. All I'll say is that when I do talk to people, and I have like friends who ask me sometimes who aren't into racing about the thoroughbred game and about the breeding aspect of it as well, they just assume that we do AI.
Right.
Like a lot of people are stunned when I tell them no, like there's physical matings every single time.
Right.
And they ask me like, well, why is that? And I honestly don't have a great answer for them other than tradition.
Right.
And that's why I would throw it back to you and ask like, what are the cons? Like, what are we holding on to with the physical breeding, business model that may go away and may be detrimental, or are there really not that many and we are just holding on to it because of tradition?
I think a lot of it's tradition. I think a lot of it is inertia. People hate change in anything, and especially in this industry. And if it's been done this way for years and years and years, then there must be a reason why. And sometimes it's lost. We can't really remember even why it is. But people do hate change. Kentucky farms, because that's where the majority of the top stallions are right now. Kentucky farms, have the stallions. It's a destination site. So people send their mares there. So there's the argument about the seasonal boarders. Again, I think it's a loss lead. I think it's a break even. When I look at people's books that have farms, they don't necessarily want to have outside mares unless they're going to be able to sell those mares and or foals. So you still could sell the subsequent foals. And again, they'd be, I think, at a higher price point. There's some legal aspects as to why it can and can't be done. I think that, we'd have to have somebody from the Jockey Club come in and talk to us about, from a registration standpoint, what the legalities are of it. But because right now the rule is that it has to be an actual mating, a physical mating of the broodmare and the stallion, being together physically as opposed to artificial insemination. I'm not saying that rule can't be changed. I'm just saying that is the way the rule is written right now, and we can put that up there, later on as far as what the actual rules are. And the other thing I think is that down the road, maybe there's going to be some technology where sperm samples can be manipulated. Right now, I know that on a centrifuge, you can spin a sample, and because the weight of a sperm that is male has 2X chromosome, an X and Y chromosome, excuse me, is a little bit heavier than the double X of a female. So you could theoretically, segregate it for colts and fillies, but I think that's still way down the line as far as whether or not the technology to do that on an accurate basis is really here. Obviously, if we wanted to implement artificial insemination, other industries have caretakers and basically governing bodies and policing of it. So you would know if the statistics show that that it's getting out of hand one way or the other. But I think it has more to do with we've had the status quo as is for a long time. And that's kind of the way that we do it. But if there's a way to make it more efficient, where it's going to save people money, where it's going to beget better bred horses, where it's going to have more horses. I mean, Joe, one of the byproducts also is that, there are mares right now that aren't being bred because economically it doesn't make sense to breed them. Well, all of a sudden, if half of the expenses went out the window, between vanning and veterinary and all those other ancillary things of sending them to Kentucky aren't a barrier to entry anymore. Well, now you have these dormant mares that maybe come back into the gene pool, okay? Or more importantly, produce foals. So that way the overall foal crop is higher. There's statistics showing that AI should increase the amount of pregnancies as well. So you'll have more viable pregnancies, at least going in, to foaling season. So, there's a lot of upticks. There's a lot of positives, I think, into doing this. And not in my mind, not enough negatives to at least have these conversations with some of the farms in Kentucky and with the Jockey Club and some of the other, powers that be. But we can't keep doing this the way that we're doing it. We can't keep having, 8-9 straight years of reduced overall foal crops, especially with the majority of them being from the same 30 or 40 stallions. That's part of it. Now, would this also introduce maybe some kind of a cap where you can only have so many samples that can be sent out a year? I don't know. That's for greater minds than mine to think about. But if you wanted to go in that direction, you wanted to say that a stallion can only have like 200 samples every year, then there really would be a hard deadline of being able to say to farms would have to say to people, we can't accommodate you. We've already sent out all 200 samples, but in our inventory we have these 15 other stallions that that also could fulfill your and satisfy your goal and your needs. Well, then again, you would be able to kind of play out and make deeper the gene pool that's out there, and you wouldn't have 150 of one stallion in a sale, which has been happening more and more and more. So I'm proposing that we examine this. I really think that greater minds than mine should get together and think about this and think about the legality of it and think about the other benefits of it as well. You can still sell the semen live foal or no guarantee, so that wouldn't change at all. So there's a lot of similarities that the only thing that's changing is you're making it safer, more efficient, and more cost effective by doing it this way. And I don't see a bad thing. As a matter of fact, I only see good things coming out of that process. But we can't sit idly by and do the same thing over and over again and expect to have a different result. We're not afforded that luxury anymore, Joe.
Real Talk is sponsored by the Green Group, the #1 accounting firm in the horse business. There's one reason they're at the top. No other CPA firm knows the horse industry like they do, and they can prove it to you. This tax season, we're just over a little months away from tax day. We know this is a complicated business with a lot of moving parts, a lot of potential deductions, a lot of potential losses. Len can help you navigate it to make it most profitable and most feasible for you. He has over 200 horses with DJ Stable. They've won over 2,500 races. They've got close to 1,000 clients in the horse business, and we're going to try to get them over that 1,000 threshold with you. Yes, you listener, calling them up and taking advantage of his complimentary, confidential half-hour consultation where he guarantees you'll get value. Call him up. And what's that number again, Michael?
732-634-5100. Green Group.
What a bop, as the kids say. What?
Is that what they say?
Was that submitted too late for the Grammys? Is that why Michael got shut out last night? outraged. Oh, sorry, Len. I'm not supposed to curse in your copy. But call him up at that number or go to greenco.com. Glenn unequivocally guarantees he'll find you value and savings. He's done it for many an industry participant, and you don't have to take it from me. Listen to friend of the show and bigwig over at Fasig-Tipton on a sites on how Len has been able to help her.
Mr. Green does my personal taxes, all of my husband, my syndicates. It's all about the girls' taxes. We do a lot at Fasig-Tipton with him, but also a lot personally with him. We had used several different accountants, and our syndicates had grown, and we had a lot of different partners, and they got pretty complicated, and it was stressful, and Mr. Green is so easy to work with, and he said, why aren't you using the Green Group? And so we were like, that's a good point. So we thought it would probably be really beneficial to have an accountant living here in Kentucky, and we didn't realize they could live in New Jersey, and it was no problem. So he's got a really good team. They're very good at communicating, and they're really good at, you get all the information to them. They get everything back to us that we need. One thing that's been really helpful for us is Lynn really gets the horse industry because he owns and breeds and sells and races horses, so he knows all the ins and outs of the racing world, but also how that pertains to the taxes. So that was a big reason we wanted to start using the Green Group, because with all that equine experience, it really helped us to know when we could save money and all the tricks that we could be doing that we probably weren't doing before. So it was a no-brainer to switch to the Green Group.
Rail Talk is sponsored by Epic Insurance Brokers, one of the nation's top retail insurance brokers, providing expertise across key lines of insurance, including property and casualty, employee benefits, and unique specialty insurance. Chris Moore, our guy, leads Epic's equine specialty practice. You see him all around at the sales, the races, etc. See you soon down at the OBS sale, I'm sure, Chris. He's got horses himself. This is his passion. Breeding season's here. Foals are dropping. Starting to make breeding decisions for mares. Give Chris a holler on how to best protect your investments. He'll fully customize your equine insurance plan to meet your needs and your risk tolerance. And your program can be completely customized. Give Chris a call, shoot him a text. He will work with the market to create the plan that works for you. 317-650-4519 is his number. And if he's not getting spam text yet, then our show is not big enough. So we will keep working at that, Chris. And on that note, here is this week's
The Epic Performance of the Week.
And it's a familiar friend. Thank you, Booming Voice. This week's Epic Performance of the Week goes to Flavien Prat, 2 weeks in a row for jockeys. So don't ever say we don't stand up for the humans in this sport, in addition to the horses. Flavien Prat, who you know I'm a huge fan of. I just now recently wiped the Flavien Prat fan club president tag from under my name in the Riverside studio. He won his Eclipse Award. So there's nothing more I can do, Flavien, bro. It's all on you from now on. You got your Eclipse. We're very happy for you. And just to show how elite he is, how dominant he is, and how willing he is to ship all around and ride horses, he flew into Tampa Bay Downs on Saturday and rode 4 winners, including 2 graded stakes. That's not easy to just pop in to a turf course, to a dirt track. You don't really know all that well. And obviously you got to have the horses, but to be able to navigate that and have as much success as he's had. I think that's one of the reasons he's now a champion rider, is like his ability to adapt quickly and on the fly. And John, you saw the races on Saturday. Tell us about it.
Well, it was great. It was the Flavien Prat and Chad Brown show at Tampa Bay Downs on that Saturday. They won 4 races, like you mentioned. Almost at every level. A maiden special weight with Goncora. Then they won the Endeavor Stakes, Grade 3 with Saffron Moon. They won the Tampa Bay Stakes, which is also a Grade 3 with Running Bee, Joe. And then finally an allowance race. And as I've heard from my beautiful bride so many times, not in a million years. Flavien won 4 out of 5 in Tampa. All 4 of those wins were for Chad Brown. And Joe, I don't know if you realize this, but he's got 25 wins in 76 starts this year. So I can do that math. That's like 1 out of every 3 races. Flavien is ending up in the winner's circle for you.
I bet you those dudes in California can't wait until the weather warms up here in New York and he's out of their hair again, because he's back in town to show them who's daddy again. Shout out to Flavien. Great weekend, man. So we were so stoked to bring this next guest to the Rail Talk studio. He might be less stoked to talk to us, or at least have to listen to us. He's the owner and the founder of Resolute Racing. John Stewart, thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely. Love your guys' show. I really enjoy it. I think it's really good commentary on the industry.
Oh, we appreciate it. And we appreciate you taking the time to come on. Let's start with this. One thing I like about you is that you're a good marketer. And I think that's something that the industry needs a bit more of. And to that end, last Thursday night, you did a live stream talking about your mating plans for 2025. This is usually something that happens behind closed doors and contracts and conversations. Just tell us a little bit about first of all, what made you want to do that? And then secondly, the feedback or the response that you've gotten from that.
When I first got into the industry, I didn't really realize how much fans tracked the horses after the races. And, when I bought Goodnight Olive, and I was kind of inundated, on social media, with people, wanting to know, who should we be mate to and all these different things. And so, as being a racing fan myself, I'm just trying to be more transparent with the fans and give them more experiences and let them kind of, tell me by, the viewership that we get or, the likes that we get on the content, what they like to see and what they want to see more of. And, we've been transparent on prep sessions for sales, and like we did at Saratoga, and we wanted to do the mating. I had the idea kind of off of the college kids picking their college in basketball, like, their selection, they put the hats on and, decide this is the school I'm going to go to or whatever. And so we wanted to do something like that for the fans to make it fun. And, just wanted to try something. And, we had some audio issues and, we had some other things, that didn't go perfect, but we had 3,000 people watch it live. So, pretty exciting for that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the transparency is great, especially with a breeding program like yourself. You mentioned, we're not going to go through each one individually because I know you went through it in great detail on your show. But it seemed like you landed on a couple of stallions that are commercial, obviously with Justify and the likes, and then you went out of the box a little bit, and you're breeding 4 mares to Complexity. Yep. I think you're breeding 4 mares, all Ghost Sapper mares, to Seize the Gray.
Yeah,
and then you had a couple other mares that like I said, that were going to Justify everything. What was the thought process behind breeding mares in a clump to Complexity, and then in 3 or 4 of the same type of mare, meaning a Ghost Sapper mare, to Seize the Gray?
Well, we do some like leading indicators on some of the stats on, the horses and really think Complexity's on the rise. He was, really over the summer did really well. Yep. And we bought a couple of Complexities at the July Fasig-Tipton sale before the prices really started to go up. And then I ended up buying 10% of him. Ended up buying 4 shares of him, because I was that big a fan. I bid on his share at the Fasig-Tipton sale in Saratoga. And, like what he's done in Europe as well as in the U.S. And, just think that, he's kind of up and coming. About 80% of my program's turf. Mm-hmm. And, I think he lines up well for that. We don't have a lot of, turf stallions, or what you would expect to be turf in the U.S.
Right.
So I think he lines up well for that. And, he's easy to breed to, when you kind of look at nicking, he's one, there's sometimes that horses are real kind of polarized and, he's an easy one to breed to. So we're kind of excited about that. And then, of course, wanted to support him with, some of our mares just have buying into him.
Right. And was it the same thing with Seize the Gray? Was the same thought
process?
Yeah,
Seize the Gray. Yeah, we only got 2 shares of him. I tried to buy him before he got bought by Gainesway to race him because I felt like he was I felt like he could still race a little bit. And I think that's part of the thing that the fans want to see is these horses run a little longer. And so I'm glad to see some of the 3-year-olds running as 4-year-olds and not going right to the breeding shed. Right. I think he's a good, mile horse. He won the Preakness, and I predicted that. If you look back at my social media, I predicted the trifecta in that race. And I think he's a fantastic. There's not a lot of arrogant around,
right?
And I think there's a good spot, for that in the commercial breeding industry. And his book's already got 178 covers in it this year and still climbing. And, look, last year when I bred the mares that I had 30, I got called out for not supporting some of the newer stallions. And so, I take a 2-time Eclipse winner and Breeders' Cup champ and send her to Seize the Gray. Then I'm getting called out for, not doing her just. Yeah. And so, it's those kind of things that makes it exciting for me is to try new things. And, either I'm going to be a genius or an idiot, with it. And I can take it either way.
Yep.
Yeah. And on that note, let's talk a little bit about your broad business plan, because we had Mike Repole on the show. I mean, he made a couple cracks, and maybe we made a couple cracks about waiting for the dispersal, because we've seen it a lot. We've seen people come into the business guns blazing, and then 2 years later, their stock is being dispersed. Contrary to what it may seem, we're not rooting for that. We like people coming in and spending a lot of money. That's what sustains the industry. So you obviously have studied the game. You have seen other people come in and spend a ton of money and then be out of the game a couple years later. What can you tell the audience that you're doing differently to make this sustainable for the long run?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm not a newcomer to the sport. I'm a new owner.
Right, yeah.
I've been following the sport for 30 years, and as a gambler, as a horse player. And I got to be honest, the horse players in some aspects know the statistics better than some of the people doing the breeding.
No question.
And so, I'm like, I have full on algorithms and systems that I use for, picking horses and things like that. So, it's kind of just, it's not like I'm just emerging. It's just, I'm going more in depth, getting more involved like some people do. Everybody kind of came in to the industry with one way. I have the same enthusiasm everybody has that first gets into the industry. I just happen to have done it at a point where I have more resources than most people have. And so I'm doing it with the resources that I have available, just like, somebody that's buying claimers, starting out, they're buying what they can buy, and they're trying to maximize and get the best quality that they can in their budget. And it's just my budget's bigger because I'm coming into it at a point where I have more resources, and I'm an investor at the end of the day. And so I do see the horse racing industry as right for investing. When people are really down on an industry, even people in the industry itself, I've made a lot of money in situations like that.
Right.
So, and I'm not an expert on every industry I invest in, with my private equity firm, but, I get expertise, and I have people, surround myself with people that are experts in the industry. If people are going to wait for my dispersal sale, they're going to be sorely disappointed. If people think I've done stuff in a large way at this point, they have no idea what I have planned. I've just bought another 500 acres to add on to my farm, in Midway, to build the perennial state-of-the-art training facility in the world. It's gonna put all of the other training facilities, as far as technology and facilities,
Right.
It's going to be the most technologically advanced training center for thoroughbred horse racing anywhere in the world.
Yeah. And that's interesting, John, because, before the show, Joe and I were watching previous interviews that you did. And last year, a little more than a year ago, when you were on another podcast, you talked about, hey, everyone goes and tries to buy colts. I'm gonna try to buy fillies and stay on the turf, and we're not going to be in the training business and stuff. But you must see opportunities as they're availing themselves, and as this game is unfolding. Even though you've been a fan and a gambler in the business, it's different when you're writing checks, buying horses. What opportunities are you seeing then where you're saying, I can build a better mousetrap and have a better training facility here than anywhere else in the United States?
Well, look, the number one reason I got into the sport was not to win anything or make any money. I will do that, but it's going to be a byproduct. I did it to advance the sport. Mm-hmm. Because I live in Kentucky. It's a big part of the local economy. I've seen the amount of the local economy that we've just let go out of the state to Florida, to a lot of the training now is done in Florida. I've got half of my 2-year-olds down in Florida right now because there's just not adequate facilities here to train the horses. And then when I got on this side of the business, I was really surprised at the lack of the use of technology. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about genetic technology and, AI and machine learning and those types of tools, in the industry. So when I see that, I tell the people this all the time, I was under the impression that these horses were treated like world-class athletes.
Right.
But they're not. They're treated like farm animals. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so we expect them to compete at a level like we do a world-class athlete. but we treat them like farm animals. Like we don't even know how much food the horse gets every day. Right. And so, and when they're in the trainer's barn, you get and again, just like any industry or any business, you get pissed off guys on the assembly line because they're mad at the union, then you're going to get poor quality cars.
Right.
You get pissed off guys on the back of the track because the living conditions are bad, the pay's bad, they can't go to the doctor and the health insurance. Who are they going to take that out on? They're going to take it out on the horses.
Right.
And not as, I'm not meaning they're going to abuse them, but look, this horse is supposed to get, a scoop and a half of food, but he tries to bite my head off every time I go in the stall. And so if I'm not feeling good today, maybe I just don't give him any food today.
Right.
Right. And who knows that other than that person? So I think there's a lot to do, on that side of things. I'm just kind of, I'm not impressed at all with the facilities at the racetracks. Because when you send the horse to the trainer, like a lot of people that aren't in the industry don't understand it, like I don't train the horses. Like if they're with Chad, they're with Chad, and they're with him for 3 years, unless they come back to take a break on the farm, they're with him as long as they're racing. And, the facilities at the tracks, wherever these people are training, they're 23 hours, in the stall every day, no turnout at most places. Payson has some turnout, but most of the tracks, no turnout for the horses. And I think there's an opportunity there because I think the advancement here there's not a silver bullet. I don't have a silver bullet. I think there's 1,000 of small things that can be done incrementally to make incremental change. And that's what I'm after, is trying to look at all of those small pieces and trying to do small things, differently.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. So on that topic, like you have the horse player background. Here's a platform to advocate for horse players and changes that you think would help to grow handle, because the shrinking handle obviously is not good for the game long term. And, we talk a lot about the CAW wagering on this show and the way it shifts odds, the way that's chasing away smaller bettors. What are some of the things that you see from your horse player background that absolutely need to be improved?
The fix is simple, and it's just overcomplicated because of the state of our industry in North America, where it's, every state is individual and, but the fixed odds is the answer. They already do it everywhere else. I mean, you can go to Australia and, like when you first start gambling, like I teach my kids, when we start going to the track, I mean, the first thing that you start doing is you start betting on the jockeys, right? And you think the better jockeys on the better horses. Well, you can go to the race in Australia and you can bet the over under on the jockey for the day. You can do some of those like simple bets. You can bet on the owner. You can bet, the trainer jockey combo. You can do some of those things. And then when you go to make your bet, you can pick fixed odds, or you can pick the pari-mutuel, when you go, to do that. And you can take that risk if you think they're going to go up or down or whatever it is that you want to do. And they're integrated, with the pari-mutuel is integrated with the actual, gambling groups that kind of manage those different areas. And it's, it's the free market. That's what we talk about in America. Right. And so there's a lot of technology there. I mean, 90% of FanDuel's profit is generated by parlay bets.
Parlay bets. Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like, why aren't we doing parlay bets? In Kentucky, and I talked with the commissioners, for the horse racing commission, but it actually, the law says they can't deny a bet as long as there's accurate statistics taken for it. And when you look at all the statistics that we have now, in the sport, like you could do a parlay bet. Who's leading the first furlong? Who has the quickest time? What's the pace of the race? All these different things. And young people, they love the parlay bets. Yeah. You go to a college campus, they're not betting the win. They're not betting the spread. They're betting a $10 bet that they can win $500 on, if they hit, 6 or 7, items. We could do the exact same thing, and we could make a massive amount of improvement in the handle without even changing the ratios that are currently going into horse racing. Right. And because you increase the volume. And then that's a way to attract in the younger gamblers into the sport. I mean, horse racing is the only sport on the planet that you can bet on 24 hours, 7 days a week. So the gambling industry they can say what they want to, but they need horse racing. Right. I mean, the NBA is kind of next with the number of opportunities to bet, but the NFL doesn't drive, a lot of opportunity. There's only 18 games, so, they need horse racing. It's there 24/7. I know people that get up in the morning, they're betting on, the European races. They bet all across the U.S. and then go to bed betting into Australia and Japan.
Oh, so you follow Joe on
you have
Twitter,
a camera on me? You have a camera on me in my house? Because
so anyway, I think that's the answer. And, it's already there. Like sometimes the best answer is the one that's in plain sight.
Right.
And there's no pride of authorship. Like who cares? Who cares if we copy somebody else's idea and execute on it? But that has immediate impact on the situation in California. That has immediate impact everywhere, is to just embrace that fixed odds and the parlay bets into the game, and then use that to, and partner with FanDuel and the other, providers, DraftKings and, these other guys to go attack these younger audience of bettors and educate them on the sport. Because, if you do even fantasy football, you start getting into statistics. Like I don't do fantasy football, because if I can't do it 100%, I won't do it. And I would have to get all into the statistics and everything to want to do it. And so I pick and choose what I do very well, very closely, because I have to commit everything to it to do it. And in this situation like this, to me, this is a no-brainer.
Yep.
Also, lower and standardized takeout, but I know that'll probably never happen. But it's worth.
Yeah, but
if
you raise the overall prize purse, I mean, you got to look at the volume that parlay bets would drive into the horse race industry. It's not a small number.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a massive number. And, and look, I mean, at the end of the day, it's got to be good for everybody. The tracks have to make business. They have to make a profit. It has to be a business. People don't like it, but that's the case. The solutions that we have to have in the industry have to be good for everyone. And here's the other thing. Everybody wants solutions and nobody wants to pay for anything. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. And so it's going to cost everybody in the short term something.
Right.
And you can't find anyone right now that's willing to put their own money on the table, including your guest from December. Like it's one thing to kind of demand everybody to do everything, but I've only been in the industry a short amount of time. I've probably invested more than $2.5 million in aftercare.
Right. Right.
I mean, I use the attention I get as an owner, and I'm not bashing anybody either. I'm talking positively.
Sure.
People on social media are saying, well, why does John have twice as many followers as, X or whoever? Well, It's because I'm not speaking negative about people and talking negative. I'm trying to talk positive about the things we're doing. I'm trying to be transparent about, what's going on. Do I talk up my horses? Of course I do. That's fun. I don't bash anybody else's horse.
Right.
It's not me winning at the expense of somebody else, but I think the sport is showing that people kind of like, the fact that, I was, talking, and did a whole campaign before we went to Japan for Goliath. And, he got 6th place over there. We still won $500,000 because of the incentives, to go over there. We got not one negative comment on social media from any of the Japanese racing fans.
Right. Well, and you mentioned transparency, especially on Twitter and social media. And one of the things that Joe and I talked about was, a couple of weeks ago, one of the investors in the Middle Ground Fund came out and had an issue and said that they were going to sue you. You got out in front of it. Win, lose, or draw, whatever the situation is, whatever transpired, you got out in front of it and said, hey guys, this is going to come out, and here are the reasons why it's coming out, and I'm going to do my best to try to address this with my investors in house. 99% of the people wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, that was something that, from a transparency standpoint, your fans wanted to know. I'm sure your attorney said, don't do it. What made you decide to do it, and how did? Well,
I'm a business person, so I make a habit of not listening to my attorneys.
You sound like my father.
Attorneys are supposed to highlight risk.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't make one investment if I did everything that they told me to do.
Right.
And so I've got to judge like the business risk, in both sides of it. And, both, and look, I think on the, my story is I started at making $10 an hour, on a night shift at a factory. Right. And, got my degree while I was working, and my investors know that story. My funds are performing very, very well. And so, you earn that credibility, with them. And so, people get sued every day, and people can say whatever they want to in a lawsuit, and it's not defamation. That's just the way the justice system works. Right. I never even replied to the lawsuit. It's already settled. I never even filed a reply. Right. And, I knew it was not an issue. People in the industry, they've talked about me from day one, and said stuff about me. And, I understand people have questions, but you know what? Sometimes people are just good people that, don't want to take anything from anyone. Right. And are just trying to have fun like everybody else is. Right. And, if everybody can just think back to the moment they got into the sport and how enthusiastic they were when they bought the first horse, and that electricity that runs through your blood, the first time you have a horse that runs on the track and it's yours, right? And it's in your silks, right? Like that charge of electricity. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's different than a horse player. Absolutely. It's a whole different experience. Win or lose, it's a whole different experience. Right. And, I felt that electricity, and I'm excited by that. I'm trying to share that with other people, which I think is good for the game. Right. And I'm not, look, at first, did I take some shots at some Mike Repole on Twitter? I did. But did he tell you in the 2-hour dialogue that I sent him an apology letter and apologized to him, ask him if we could like make this go better for the industry? Because I didn't like horse farms coming to me and saying, well, he's going to be there. Are you okay with it at this party or whatever? And I'm like, that's bad for the industry. And, I won't even tell you what his responses were, but he's kind of happy with keeping things the status quo. But, and that's why I decided it's just better not to interact with him. I don't want to do anything that has a negative connotation, on the sport that I love. We sponsored the Eclipse Awards this year. And I did that because I think it's one of the most special moments in horse racing for people, and, wanted to, to support, that endeavor. I bought stallion shares. Right. I don't need the income from the stallion shares, but I'm doing it to support the broader industry, because if I support their business, are they going to support my business? Right. And so that's the way I'm just trying to be involved in the industry and be a positive player in the space. And I'm really not trying to make any enemies. Right. I don't want my horses involved in any controversy. Right. I want to compete at the highest levels with integrity. I want to be able to, run against your horse and congratulate you when it wins. Right. And I'm the type of person, my horse gets second place. I got third. Diddy got third in the Breeders' Cup. We were tickled to death. Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're in the Breeders' Cup. I mean, I'm not gonna, sure, you get disappointed, when things happen, but, it's just, I've got that new owner kind of enthusiasm, and I'm trying to share it with people, like others are. Jason Worth is also doing some good work, getting new owners involved in the sport. And, I think some of that's good for the industry. I'm not, even if I say I want to do something to improve something, I'm not denigrating what anybody else is doing. Right. Like, exactly. I'm not trying to tell Coolmore how many stallions they need to breed their stallion to. If Coolmore wants to put out the money, right, and pay for the horses, they can do whatever they want to with them. Right. Right. Just like market. I can buy Goodnight Olive and send her to, Seize the Gray, if that's what I want to do. If they think $280 a year is what they need to cover the fact they paid $75 million for the horse, I'm not going to be the person to tell them no. Right. That's their business, and they know it better than I do. But at the same point in time, I'm not going to sell my horses to them if I think they're not doing it right, and then talk smack about their business, because that's not being a good business partner. Right. It's like you'll take their money when they want to pay you for your horse, but then you're going to talk bad about them. If you really think that they're standing horses with too many covers, and you've got and you're a multi-billionaire, then you know what you need to do is you need to stand them yourself and only cover 100 each and be the example for the industry. Right.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I just want to follow up on that because, first of all, we told Mike this and we'll tell you this, that if you guys both want to come on the show and chat, I think that would be amazing. We could put up money for charity or something like that because I do think this dialogue is more productive when it's face to face and not on Twitter. I think the tweet storms sometimes are a little bit counterproductive, but
guys, you could go and look. I don't tweet it. I don't tweet any responses to him.
No, exactly.
That's fine. I'm just talking about
it's all one-sided.
Yeah, I'm just talking about in general. But the broader question is, have you faced other pushback from industry veterans since you came in the way you did?
And has that attitude changed? It's actually, look, and I'm sure that there's people that, talk behind my back. I'm used to that, too. You don't get where I've been, and come the way I came up without, I don't have a finance degree and I got my name on a finance school at the University of Kentucky, and I donated $10 million to the University of Kentucky before I had $10 million.
Right.
Right.
And that's not even where you went.
Myself to earn the $10 million. Right.
Right.
And so, I consider myself fortunate, every day. So, but there's people that'll talk about you or whatever. It motivates me because, when they say my dispersal sale, I love it. To be honest with you, after the show that you guys had, I doubled down at the sales in Europe to bring horses over here. Cause you know what, when it comes to like our disagreements, I'm going to answer on the track.
Right.
My first year as a racing owner, I was the 15th leading stakes owner, not counting partnerships. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I ran in 70 races, 62 of them stakes races. We were in the money 58% of the time.
Right. Right.
So you can cast stones all you want on what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
Right.
But, it's, we won $3.5 million, including partnerships last year in our first year. I mean, pretty good, results for the team. So do we do things a little unorthodox? Maybe, but go back to your question. Yeah, there's been some people, but I just block them out. Like on my social media, if you want to disagree with me, that's fine. John disagreed. I embraced it. I'll have the discussion. I think that's good. And other people disagreed with what I am breeding, too. That's fine. But if you're going to be disrespectful to somebody else, or you're going to be disrespectful to me or my team, and you don't want you just want to, do that kind of clickbait stuff, I just block them.
Yeah. And
I have a lot of people that will text me and apologize when I block them, or they'll reach out to me and have someone else reach out to me and apologize.
Right.
I'm fine with us questioning stuff, but, just because, social media, I don't like it for the fact that just because you have an opinion doesn't mean everybody needs to hear it. Mm-hmm. And if you look at my posts, I'm not trying to tell everybody in the industry what to do. I did a post that got made fun of by Mike. And all I said was, if everybody in the industry would just close their eyes and just imagine what a good industry looks like, and then look at what their role is in that scenario and how they're acting in that scenario where it's a good industry. And then when you open your eyes, just start acting that way. That's how we can change the industry. Right. And I got called out for that post. I wasn't trying to tell anybody what to do. That's philosophy, right? I'm getting ready to tell all my workers, they're coming in for our quarterly meeting, and tell them the same thing, right? If you want the business to be what you want it to be, you're a part of it. Just start acting like it. You start with yourself and act like it.
Yep. No, and you empower them by doing that. I mean, that's a great classic way of working with people and having employees buy into it and have them act like an owner. Because if you empower them with the ability to do so and you encourage them, then good things will happen. I mean, that's great business practice. John, the last question I have for you, and again, we appreciate your time on by coming on, is I've been in the business a long time, and people have said to me over the years, what have you learned by being in the business? And in very different stages. What I learned in year 2 was different than year 5, year 10, year 40 now. I'm going to ask you that question. What have you been in this for 2 years? You've been spending a lot of money. You've been improving your stock. Yes, you had a great run, but I'm sure next year, meaning 2025, you want to have those kind of numbers at Saratoga, Keeneland, and Churchill, as opposed to, some of the other racetracks. What have you learned in the 2 years that you're surprised about, either about the industry as a whole or about individual, not like calling people out, but like you're surprised that people have done X, Y, Z? The biggest surprise to me is that
people that this kind of breed to sale model that we moved to is proven to be a no good business model for the people buying horses.
Right.
Right. If you go back to the last 15 years and you look at the horses that have been the top 50 earners, the average sale price has been $250,000.
Right.
The chances of buying a horse that's over $1 million and it ending up being a top 50 earner is like 2.5%.
Like 0%. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So, you know, and I bought some high dollar horses, right? And believe it or not, sometimes I do that. It's just been for my brand. Like when I bid on the Winx filly, I did that all as branding, right? I spent 1 week in Australia and I have a huge following in Australia just from that Winx filly. And I didn't even buy the horse, right? But I created a market, you know, and you know, part of it, I'm a business person. Like I understand that. Buying the top horse at Saratoga or at such and such, it carries headlines, right? You know, those are free, you know, and if you get a good horse along with it. But I know that my horse that I paid $2.5 million for, and I want to pay $50,000 for, you know, the odds on are that it's pretty even on who's actually going to make it to the track and who's going to make a difference.
Right.
And so, you know, I've studied a lot, and the one thing that's really interesting, and the bloodstock agents out there will hate me for this, but conformation of young horses is the only factor that our team has studied that has no correlation to winning on the racetrack at graded stakes level. And that's how all the commercial value is. And all these surgeries that these young horses go through, and there's not transparency in that.
Well, that's a,
so you go buy a horse, he looks straight, but he looks straight because he had 2 screws and a wire, you know,
right.
And, you know, unless you or, you know, can figure that out, you know, and it happens so much, you know, because I'm a breed to race operation and I'm telling the vets, they're telling me, hey, we need to do this. And I'm like, but I'm not selling it.
Right.
Like, I don't care. I don't care if it's a little crooked. Look at Sierra Leone.
Right.
You know, he's got a leg that flails, you know, and you know, he runs fantastic. You know, you see horses like that all the time. So I'm just surprised that that model, you know, and pretty sophisticated people, you know, that have been in this a lot longer than I have. I mean, I learned that really quickly, you know, that's just not a smart business proposition. Now, I had to fill in the gaps with, you know, because I don't have any of my homebreds, you know, it takes some time to get those.
Yep.
You know, I'm probably going to have to buy some yearlings this year because, you know, we had a small group last year. This year we got 30. Next year we'll have 60, you know, and so it'll start speeding up for me there. But, and I understand that some of the market you have to buy at the sales if you want access to them. But, you know, you're not going to see us buying as many young horses as like I have 51 2-year-olds right now.
Right.
That, you know, and most of those were purchased, you know, all of those were purchased.
Yep.
You know, you're not going to see that out of us on a go forward basis.
Right.
You know, it's much better. I can take the same money and buy a horse that's broken its maiden.
Right. That's proven. That's
proven for the same amount of money. Like, you know, $1 million, you know, you pay $1.5 million, $2 million for a top pedigree horse at the sale.
Right.
You know, you can buy a lot of horse that's already proven.
Yep.
And, you know, I think that's a pretty good business model.
Absolutely. Well, the way that my dad and I were talking about you over the weekend is you have an expansion team. Basically, you're like an expansion football team in essence, and you're trying to fill the gaps in. And in the beginning, you got to pour a lot of money into the building blocks of it. But eventually, you're already going to have the left tackle, you're going to have the running back, you're going to have the quarterback, and now you just need to fill in occasional gaps in free agency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, it's kind of like if you look at like college basketball, right? So we went through that phase, you know, where it was, you know, in UK, Coach Calipari was known for it, getting all the great talented freshmen. Right. And then the transfer portals now changed the whole game.
Right.
Now look at the Kentucky team we have where we don't really have any of these like standout freshmen. They're all like transfer portal kids that were at these lower tiered schools that have lots of experience.
Yep.
And, you know, now they're outperforming, you know, the teams that we've had in the past, you know, and so the whole sport has changed.
Right.
And that's the thing about horse racing is change comes whether you want it or not.
Yep.
And so you have to adapt to change. And I think this, when the market has moved now for the first crop ever of horses that are more in the sale than they are being raced, you know, if we went over the 50% threshold for the first time,
Right.
So, people are going to have to adapt to that, because otherwise, you're going to go, people could go spend 20, 30, 40 million on yearling sales, and you have 5 horses make the track.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if they all make stallion. Like,
Right.
you're not making a return on your investment.
No, exactly.
I mean, the other thing too is it produces inefficiencies in the stallion market, because you see stallions be given up on because they don't have huge sales numbers before they even have horses on the track, and then the horses start to run on the track, and people realize, oh shit, we made a mistake. Just because they didn't sell great doesn't mean they can't run.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, and so that's one thing. The other surprising thing to me is that we only race horses here every 5 or 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. In Australia, they race my horses every 2 weeks.
Right.
Yep. In Europe, they race them every 3 to 4 weeks.
Right.
And Francis Graffard over in Europe, he's one of the leading trainers over there. He said, John, I don't understand why the trainers in America breeze horses. Mm-hmm. And he said, we don't breeze them. He said, we run them.
Right.
We run them on the track.
Yep.
So if you think about, like, we're talking about not having as many horses to compete on the track. Well, if we just went from 6 weeks to 5 weeks,
right, with
the number of horses we have, how many more entries does that create in the year of quality horses?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so, it's everybody's got to think a little differently.
Right.
You can't just keep doing everything the way that you did. If your program was every 6 weeks and that's what you did, need, if you're a trainer, you need to be adapting that.
Yep.
You need to be thinking about, you need to be trying to be a part of the solution to the problem of not having, enough horses, for the racing schedule that we have. Yep. And so we know the foal population is declining, but do you realize, what do you think is dropping first? The number of foals or the number of races?
Oh, it's the number of starters per race is decreasing faster.
Yeah, it's decreasing faster than the number of foals.
Foals, yep.
So the foal population is dropping because there's not enough races.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And so, again, like it's kind of interrelated. Now, on a positive note, I'll say the thing that, and because I like to be positive, is the fan engagement. I never would have thought that I would have 30,000 followers on Twitter in a year, and, that, we set an internal target to get to 20,000, with my marketing team, which my daughter runs and manages all of that. And, but I think I'm showing that having a positive message out there and being real and accessible to fans and people, is something that the fans want.
Right.
And, again, the sport, the owners and the breeders, some of them get a little too ahead of themselves, because without the gamblers and the casual fan, there is no sport.
Yeah, we're all screwed. Yeah, exactly.
100%.
It all.
So why would we not embrace them?
Right.
Then it's just the dog show world,
and that's why I'm doing these events. Like, I had the Breeders' Cup. I had 120 guests that came off of Twitter, right? That, were people that got invited to a suite experience, that I paid for personally. And the Derby this year, we did it at Saratoga at Belmont. At the Derby, I have an 80-person suite that I'm, just bringing horse racing fans, people that it's been their dream their whole life to go to the Kentucky Derby. Yep. It's so expensive now to go to the Derby. These events, these big race events, should not be for elite people who, just don't even know our sport. And it's good to get new people in the sport. Don't get me wrong. But, I want that guy that is, he shows up every day at Aqueduct. And if you show up every day at Aqueduct, you're dedicated, right?
Some would say crazy.
Yeah. So, and you hang out with all the Jamaican,
those are my people
down there, right? That's a great experience. And it's a good atmosphere. It's good. It's good fun. I want that guy that's always wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby, or that woman that's always wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby. I want them to get to go. I want these grooms, and we've had grooms get to go. That when I was 2 of Brad Cox's grooms, actually made it to our suite, and Brad let them come up to our suite when they weren't having to take care of the horse at the Breeders' Cup. And so, they had that experience. And then we had other owners, like I had Elliot from WinStar come up there and meet people. Bob Baffert came up and met people. Ignacio Correas came up and met people. Chad Brown came up. And the fans were like, they were just loving it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They're rock stars. So you're bringing rock stars to them.
Yeah. You're bringing rock stars to them. And, that's what I think the sport's missing a little bit. I think, I see people are, guys, this is fun. Like, when people go to the races, they're with their families, they're having fun. Have fun with them, and maybe it'll energize people a little bit too.
Yep.
And that's one of the great things about Saratoga is people bring in their coolers, they set up their picnic tables. You could use a little bit more of that in other tracks throughout the country. I would love to see the guys, to your point, who are yelling at us from above when we're in the paddock. I want to see at Aqueduct. I want to see them at the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, me too.
Those are the diehard.
And I'm giving them the opportunity to get there. Like I'm giving those people a voice and an opportunity. And look, I got trolled hard by a guy on Twitter. I'm not going to mention his name, but everybody knows him. Because he goes after everybody. He was saying I was a plant for Gainesway and the Japanese, and it was all this kind of crazy like stuff, and everything. And I just approached him. I sent him a DM and I said, dude, I'm just a pretty straight up guy. Like, ask me whatever you want to know. Seems like you're really interested and passionate. And then ended up inviting him to Belmont, to with us, and so it took a situation like that and just
turned it around.
Use that person and said, hey, look, we're not what you think we are. I think it's good to talk and engage, on things. And I think good disagreement is great. I mean, I embrace all that. I think that's fun. And I wish that, I wish me and Mike could have like the type of relationship where we are doing it for the better of the sport and kind of going back and forth with each other, but that relationship's not possible.
Not now, but maybe hopefully in the future, down the line, for the betterment of the sport. Hopefully that'll happen.
Unfortunately though, guys, I think he's only interested in bettering the sport if it's his idea. He doesn't really engage with any other activities or efforts. If it's not his, his alliance, which I don't even know, how can you be an alliance if you're just one group, right? What is yeah, we got the confetti there.
Confetti.
But how can you be an alliance if you're just one group? Like an alliance would be like, you got to have like half the farms on your side to call yourself an alliance. And so, that's where I just wish he would like, it's almost like he's trying to like emulate Donald Trump and Elon Musk, on Twitter. And unfortunately, he might be rich, but he's not those guys. Yeah, no, I mean, look, and like I said, I wrote him an apology letter that I'm happy to make public, after what happened at Belmont, where, that situation in the paddock, which I won't go into detail, but people saw, I thought it was bad for the game. I reached out to him. I reached out to his team, tried to, do things. And, he can't control himself from taking cheap shots, at people. And, he made a cheap shot at me in the paddock this weekend. I just didn't even respond, and, it's just, I can go up to everybody else in the sport and I can shake their hand and wish them luck in the race. And I really mean, I want their horse. I'm a big fan of Fierceness, but because I think Sierra Leone's a better horse than Fierceness, like I'm like, he can't even talk to me. Right. And like, if you can't respect someone else's horse like Sierra Leone, I mean, it's the first time Coolmore ever won the Breeders' Cup Classic. MV Magner cried.
Yeah.
He cried after the race.
He was speechless after the race. He handed off the microphone because he couldn't. It was so overwhelmed with emotion.
I mean, if you don't love the game enough to recognize that moment and how special it was for them and how much they've done for the sport and how much they've invested in the game, then, like, again, that's just like, that's part of the problem. Like, you got to be willing to, one of the best things I like, John, and you talked about it, you bought a horse from one of ours, and I'll every time I have a complexity horse, Mensa, every time he runs, I get a text from Brett at Airdrie.
Right. Who's super. Brett's phenomenal.
Good luck. Yeah. Every time I have my Not This Time's run, Taylormade's texted me. Yeah. Right. And they're watching, and all of our success is tied in with each other.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Exactly. It's like, it's like if your horse wins, like if that horse wins, I'm not going to think, oh, I was stupid to sell it to him.
Right.
I made the right business decision for myself at the point. Right.
Exactly.
And if you buy it and do great with it, fantastic for you.
Yeah. Well, we're all tied in together. I mean, there's only a limited number of horses out there. And so if you're rooting for somebody and it benefits you as well, then it's exponentially that much better. I will correct you on one thing though that you said, and I know you said it tongue in cheek in your reveal. I did have surgery on my mouth. That's the only reason why I wasn't there. It was I know you invited me and you wanted
we wanted you there
to be down there, and I would appreciate being down there.
Next year I'd love to do it with like the other farms and just do the top mares.
Yeah.
Like the real, like the ones that have the brand value to them, and and have the stallion farms there.
Yep.
And have like a group of you guys that are there.
Yep.
And do it like, and like make it conversational where fans could like make comments and you guys could represent the fans and talk about that. And I think it'd be fun.
Well, and John, we're thinking out loud right now. We would be, wanting to do that. But I think what we could do is if we got a brain trust of enough of us, of 4 or 5 groups that represented a good number of mares, because we have 30 something mares also, is that, if we want to breed to Justify, you want to breed there's 4 of us that want to breed Justify. Well, then, not that MV is going to be there, but somebody from
Adrian was at mine. Yeah.
And we say, hey, if we're gonna buy these 4 seasons, then can we get a group discount? And I mean, what kind of advertising would that be? Where all of a sudden Coolmore now would know that Goodnight Olive is being bred there, our champion mare is being bred, and it would just be a good crossover, and they would get the benefit of the marketing, and we would get a little bit of a price discount as well. But it would be synergistic. It'd be that we're all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, no, I think it was great. I mean, having Adrian on the show, people really liked that portion of it.
Yep.
We invited some of the others, and they wanted to come. Some of them were traveling, a lot of racing going on and stuff. And we just kind of pulled it, together because I just wanted to get it done. But I think next year it'd be great to have like other farms in the top mares that everybody's really following, the top ones that are retiring, and and do that. It's good for everybody. Plus, it's given the fans another access point.
Yes.
Right.
And it's a different one, right?
Yep.
So it's taking the veil away a little bit behind
Yep.
and providing them with something else to talk about besides just what happens on the track or the bad stuff that goes on. It's another angle to give them, an angle into it. And who knows, one of those people might be a future owner.
That's it. Yeah. That's all you're hoping for is
just to go back to what I originally said. I think your outreach and your marketing has been great. And that's something that I think we could never criticize, and we're glad to have you in the game. If for no reason, then for you reaching out to these new people and, like you said, pulling back the curtain, because that's huge for the development of the game and development of the fan base. John Stewart, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and chat with us. We'd love to have you back on the show. Appreciate it, man.
Sure. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, so that's going to do it for episode 78 of Rail Talk. Thank you to John Stewart for coming by and chatting with us. Thank you to Andrew Stewart, no relation, our buddy at Arian Pedigrees, for giving us those pedigrees that we popped up during our MAGE Rage Derby Contest rundown. Thank you to my co-pilot, John Green, our producer, Patty Wolf, our associate producers, Julia Gresta and Nathan Wilkinson. And remember, if you got an issue with something that we say, please reach out to us directly. You can call us, text us, or go to the website and join the conversation. You can send us a letter to the editor, and we will look at it, publish it, probably talk about it on the show. We always welcome open dialogue. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. I almost said next year. God, I hope not. Next week, back here on Rail Talk.